All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of Raegen's book, Head of a Gorgon. Raegen has gathered up some folks that she feels were integral to helping little Medusa grow big and strong. So these writers, publishers, poets, and creatives will enthrall you all with some selected works in just a few moments. And then we will top off the evening with a reading from Medusa, aka Raegen herself. And first up of the evening is Julia Leverone, a comparatist who has taught writing, literature, culture, and Spanish. Her debut full-length poetry collection, Duo, is forthcoming from Kelsey Books. Her book of translations of selected poetry of Francisco Paco Orondo, Fuel and Fire, won a grant from the Argentinian government, and her second poetry chapbook, Little Escape, won the 2016 Claudia Emerson Prize from JMWW. She holds a Ph.D. from Washington University in St. Louis and an MFA from the University of Maryland at College Park. She currently lives in the Appalachians, but is native to northeastern Massachusetts and has lived in Dallas. She has served on the editorial staffs of Smartish Pace, Sakura Review, Asymptote, and is the founder and editor of Azona L, the online magazine of poetry and translation. And I am going to drop you her website and her Instagram in the chat. Julia, take it away.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here to be celebrating Medusa. I happen to have a black lab named Medusa, which doesn't have nothing to do with Raegen's book name, but she's a little psycho still, so she's not going to be appearing on camera. I have some poems to read from you from my upcoming manuscript. I have my first book forthcoming. At 36, which is like final. You can't see my streaking sun, so that's good. Another disclaimer is that I have increasingly less cavity space because I'm pregnant and also sick. So forgive me if my breathing and reading is a little haltered. But again, thank you so much for listening. I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear everybody else. And here we go. Star-nosed mole. The star-nosed mole's 22 tentacles devour 8 prey in 2 seconds, the world's fastest forager. Incisors emerge nearly indecipherable between prehensile star spurs. Its muddy flumes underground, underwater carry other moles, weasels and shrews. Once its outsized claws have cleared the root, or when it comes upon some small swathe, ceilinged or no, its nose forms a topographical map. To map probable encounter, to encounter a molecular, solid, freezing being in a dim den, a squeeze of space, to extend the sense of what we consider infinitive. Sinkhole. Adhesivos radio in the karst zone, limestone lush, perfectly dug, is a bowl open to all kinds of rain. This rain, hard dropped, yet unheavy, escorted swiftly by flora within, roused the mist so fast, I felt I learned the meaning of ghosts. Propelled by need and consumption, hasty, escaping the already rapidity of precipitation's finish. That hatch undone, that series of equations unleashed. Cephalic discord. I'll give a little banter about this one. I was revisiting St. Louis. I lived there for a time, and stayed in their B&B with a person who lived in the apartment as a shared Airbnb, who turned out to be a sleepwalker. So now that you know that, this is cephalic discord. Well after she entered my bed, with the frenzied insistence of a dream path, and woke to the unknown, I realized the rush she must have experienced crossing the hallway in that intransigent long moment of waking, unclothed in the bare morning light, was that of a separation separate as a cephalopod's arm ganglia from its brain, cephalic discord. Her arms that knew probing, near accused of her body adrift but for her vocal plea, not really intended for me. Baby. And then what? Trodden scape of surprise indeed, she may have already known she was suckered too. And here's my Medusa poem. I love this one. I love Medusa. I love thinking about Medusa. This is called Anew. Look upon me. Minerva's done this. In the blue depths, human hair floats willfully, and now above mine slithers, fixed. I am in love with it. As far as Poseidon, I remember clearly sliding throughout the bulge of the sea, some of it getting in me, that it made me jolt, shifting, its twisting. Released like some bone-bereft jellyfish, I am now one of those, all head and hair, and hope never to return to the beforehand. I am a mother of myth. Cursed by my kind, I am more than what were once my kind. Winged horses burst from me, Medusa, Medusae. Okay, I have two more for you. This is called On My Miscarriage of a Daughter. Our giant star converted and converted exponentially. I felt her hot wave hit me, join my vortex, spread throughout my limbs. It felt like forever she turned and burned the weight of herself. A devised division for not having other strands like wind-spun strings of gas or dust, cast, flung, withdrawn. But everyone knows star deaths mean star births. Imagine filaments spiraling, soft congealment. Again, space is waiting against fruitless demise. Okay, and windmills. Alien-like, whittled, lipped, arced limbs near prehensile, or poised beguiling like spurs, spines, or pine needles alive, grown, and seeping. Newcomer watching of our topography and us in cars between the hills. The windmills are quite monsters, no matter which of us disbelieves. Odd friend, don't say to me that in whipping with the wind speed, these can tear their bodies terribly down. Do, in their mystique and pursuit looses, and flying ties us hard to earth. I say we bite off this sphere and suck the dizzying future sweet. When buzzed, reeling, regenerate so that our lit dust might spiral, if not beautifully, then mark a shape, if not precise, then dancing with the seeming absence circumambient. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. That was absolutely beautiful. I appreciate you sharing that. I loved the shocker, the poem about Medusa. Man, such a good mythology. Thank you, Raegen, for so kindly focusing your book on something we all enjoy. Next up, we have Leanne Hordfell. Her work has appeared widely in journals, including New Southerner, Lunch Ticket, and Spry. She has written 3 chapbooks, most recently Fleshed out of Wing City Press. She is the recipient of the Kudzu Prize in Poetry, as well as the Juliet Miller Scholarship from SAFTA. She lives and writes in North Carolina. Leanne, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Raegen, for having me. I feel really, really honored to be part of your journey. And from the first moment I read your work, when you sent it into my press, I loved it. And I knew that you were going to go places. So thank you. I've got a few here to read. I'll just get started. This is a poem. It's called What to Do When You're Locked Out of Your Home. You'll want to panic. Don't. This happens to everyone. It's important to remember you're not alone, not ever really alone. Can you hear a lawnmower in the distance? The gravel and a dog's bark? Good. Safe in the dumb lullaby of day. You could pace the perimeter, check windows, rattle doorknobs. This is a waste of time. You lock up tight. All day curtains drawn, lights left on, so whatever you fear will get you, won't get you. But now you're here. Step back. Keep stepping back. Step back until you lose sound, no lawnmower, no dog, nothing but your heart shaking the bars of its cage. This is where you wait. There is something inside your home that wants out. You knew this day would come. Try not to count the hours. Don't move. Don't think. Listen. The door will open if you let it. Look, the knob is turning now. I've got a poem about Laika, which was the first animal to die in space. She was a little stray dog in Russia. I'm a giant space geek. I spent today on my birthday at the Science Center watching stuff about black holes and dinosaur bones and all that stuff. So I had to include a space poem. So this is called Laika. It's got a little epigraph in the beginning by Oleg Gazenko, which is one of the scientists that worked with the animals that they were training. And talking about those animals, he said, "We treat them like babies who cannot speak. Tended like a baby, perhaps, but not worth retrieval. Was she bitch when her bladder leaked on the floor of the mock cabin? Packaged, alloyed, gifted to space, led out of Moscow snow into the room of another doomed vessel. How she shot from the barrel, little glitterati. Harnessed, she could only sit, stay, lie down. From Earth's pull, fire pushed her, pitiful brown thing, into all that darkness. She became the opposite of a diamond. Radio waves tangled in the wind, ocean, 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 then beep, beep, beep. Sputnik's telemetry, a rapid pulse in her well-trained ear. In the night, men hovered, blankets and arms pulled tightly across children who pointed to the sky, to the light that might be a dog, fur floating in the weightlessness, nosing dumb and fumbling in the first orbital death. In the shadows, that slow self-repulsion, a father whispered, "Hush," when asked where stars go when they die, and felt his feet touch ground for a moment. This next poem is called 3 a.m. Conversation with the Lady in the Carousel Music Box. And it's just as it sounds. We have this little carousel music box with a little lady in it. And I wrote this poem thinking about her one day. Lately, you've been admiring her advantages. 2 knees that won't unbend, black chignon that doesn't gray. Her hands cradle a yellow horse's reins, her hips slender and blameless, eyes trained forward on everything that can't happen next. It's a small world, after all, full of left turns and impossible angles. You envy her predictable circuit, her always. She doesn't need to be careful. She doesn't need to stay away from lovely mouths, back seats and bourbons, mornings that come sooner and sooner. You chew the inside of your mouth. You die to satisfy the meanness scraping inside. Go on then. Tell her about compulsion and how you don't know why you do the things you do. Then tell her the things you do know. Floundering heart, stumbling upstairs. How fucking at night while drunk is like being underwater because you can't breathe. Because all your instinct knows is to claw at anyone solid enough to bear you. This next poem I wrote after I had a fight with my son. I have 3 sons. The oldest is 20, and it's a really rough time, the teenage years when they're kind of coming into their adulthood. So we had a lot of fights, but in one fight in particular, I wrote this poem that was kind of a backwards playing of everything that happened between us. And what's so funny is that my kids really don't read my poems. They're not like really into that stuff, which is fine. But I did a reading last year and I read this poem. And after the reading, I came out of my room and I was walking downstairs and my son was standing at the bottom of the stairs and he was like, "Mom, explain your poem. So I didn't explain it. I said, well, that's up to you to figure out, whatever. But here's the poem. It's called Backward. It wasn't raining, that's for sure. We kissed and made up. You hugged me for the first time in a long time. I hugged you back, hard. You crept down the stairs, one foot in front of the other, as if at any minute you'd fall off earth. 3 of us sat together in the dark. I was happiest. You unbuttoned your bottom lip and whispered, "Is this real?" And we both whispered back, "No." A clock chimed, backward. Before you left, I said, "I love you." You said, "Oh, I didn't know, but I knew you did." Your eyes looked like twin tunnels. The dog whined at the door, so I turned the lock. All day we held hands, first yours and mine, then mine and yours. I would never tell anyone else this, but the last time you looked at me like that, I cried for days. And then the last poem I have to share is an anxiety poem, which I think a lot of people deal with anxiety. It's like a big part of my life. So this poem came out. It's called "This Is Not a Drill." According to the red dot, we are here, purple-faced and panting. No doorknobs to twist or keyholes to slip through. Nothing works, especially not our mouths. It's all black ice and virulence. A crow watches the frenzy enwrapped. Please stow your baggage in the overhead compartment. Please secure your own mask before helping others. Do you have insurance? It is not an extravagance. There are rubber gloves in each drawer, none fit. Your paper bag's blown out. The needle won't thread. The radio won't crank. The following planes have been grounded due to unsafe flight conditions. I repeat, we will all stay in these bodies until further notice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leanne. I loved those. I really loved how the anxiety one actually started producing an anxiety response in my body. So that was awful, but good job, I guess. You win that one. And next up, we have Greg Blake Miller, Ph.D. He is an award-winning writer and editor who teaches literary nonfiction and media studies at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. He is also the editorial director of rjmagazine and director of Olympian Creative, a coaching and mentoring service for creative professionals. Honored as Nevada's outstanding journalist, Miller also writes fiction. He is the author of the illustrated short story collection Decemberlands, and his recent work appears in Red Canary's Eco-Lit series. He is a former staff writer for the Moscow Times and is currently completing a novel set in the 1960s Soviet Union. And you can learn more at his website, which I'm going to drop for you now. In the meantime, Greg, please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is a little bit different because I'm going to read a section of the aforementioned novel, which I've just completed. So the draft number, X to the 12th, but so it's ready to roll. This story takes place in Moscow. The chapter I'm about to read you takes place in 1962 during a period called the Thaw, a relative easing of state terror during the post-Stalin era. The character who you'll be hearing is Kira Morozova. She's a 25-year-old student at the State Cinema Institute in Moscow. She is among her friends from the State Cinema Institute, including mysterious and perhaps time-traveling American named Tom Benjamin, who is they're becoming close. So here we go. Everything grows by the river. Clusters of golden brown cattail, little bluebells of indigo, water lilies shaped like angels with lifted wings. Just under the water, if you wade in, slippery mollusks and crawfish and sturgeon who wandered in from the faraway Volga when our workers dug the Moscow Channel. Birch groves reach almost to the bank, leaving a narrow beach at Rublyova for boys and their guitars and their stories and me. Somehow I'd wound up the only girl invited to shashlik. There was Gena and Finn, Mita and Shukshin, Andrei Tarkovsky and Andron Konchalovsky, Tom and me. Natalia, Gennady's wife, had refused to come. She told Gena she couldn't bear to see him drink and received the following reply: "Don't worry, I'll only drink a little." Natalia was putting Gena to the test, and Gena was failing. The apartment they shared on the Arbat was charming. Tom and I had been invited twice for salami and cheese and mineral water. Two elderly women lived next door, and they believed that Gena had won the Nobel Prize for Literature because Gena told them so. When Gena tells you something, you believe it until you start to think. These women had never started to think. For a week, a month, 2 months, 3, Gena came home from his day's work and ate dinner with Natalia and wrote at a little desk a few feet from the little table where she too was writing. Eventually they stopped writing and talked, or Gena played something on his guitar, or they made love, or they put their shoes on and went walking until it was very, very late, stopping at the statue of Mayakovsky so Gena could pay his respects. Gennady had once written that change was necessary to prevent one's city, one's alley, one's building and stairwell and door and room, and I imagine one's bed, from becoming a bore. He had in mind not the abandonment of these things, but the maintenance of their peculiarity in their mind. He suffered from a unique type of nostalgia, the best type, I think, in that he longed to return to things specifically in order to discover their newness, their quiddity, the uncanny unfamiliarity of familiar things. He needed to stir himself from the everyday so that it would seem miraculous upon his return. He was like our Gagarin, soaring into space, descending in heat and flame, and delighting in the staggering newness of Mother Earth, the shock of re-entry. Re-entry shock was the foundational necessity of Gennady's personality, the unstable core of his joy. His love was based on leaving. But how many glorious returns could a woman stand? Gennady loved to travel, but he could not afford it. What he could afford was to wander until dawn without his wife by his side. What he could afford was to knock on the doors of assorted friends at assorted hours of assorted nights, requesting a place on any unoccupied sofa. What he could afford was a bottle of cheap liquor. The dream of making every moment a holiday has a high cost. The pressure is overwhelming. Who can afford that? I don't know who brought wine to the river. They'll all plead innocent, every one of them. I didn't bring the wine. I brought my guitar, and Gena brought his. Tom had a harmonica. Andron had the meat. Andrei built the fire. The two of them were friends and rivals, writing and jousting partners. The expectation of greatness hung over them like a thundercloud. All night long, Tom kept disappearing into the forest and returning with kindling. It was the solstice. The night was short, and we had, it seemed, agreed not to close our eyes. Andrei told us about the solstices of old, Ivan Kupala's day. We would be leaping through the flames, he said. There would be fires everywhere. We'd be running, embracing. You, Kira, would have flowers in your hair. The rest of it I can't tell you. It's unchristian. Don't be a prude, Andrei, said Andron, who knew all the actresses of Moscow and was confident he'd soon know them better. It was, Kira dear, a night of love-making, the purest of joy, ritualistic abandon until you could no longer tell that the abandon was ritual. I strummed my guitar. Yeah, Andron, I can hear the old epic now. The cheeks of Andron were scarlet from slaps. To the forest he dashed, naked and weeping. Only the spirits have seen him since, and all summer maidens are peacefully sleeping. Andron shrugged. There's always a price to pay. Tom and I kept asking Gena to sing, song after song. He lost himself in the words, went somewhere far away. We didn't let him touch the wine. I told myself I was protecting Natalia, guarding their foundering union. Maybe I was protecting my sense of them as a fairy tale, these two beautiful people with beautiful minds. It was remarkable they'd survived as long as they had. She with her clear-eyed view and her work ethic and her capacity to see the granular impurity of the world and therefore understand its grand imperfections. He with his cycles of exuberance and heartbreak, his fresh shock each time the world proved itself unworthy of his open arms. Some people need one another, and are incapable of remaining together. What wine was this? The bottles were unlabeled. The red was too red, insufficiently purple. Each time I moved the bottle from Gennady's hand, I brought it to my lips. What better way to save a drinker than to drink the bottle dry? It was clearly samagon, moonshine of recent bathtub vintage. There was a nauseating hint of cherry. Tom asked me if I was okay, and I assured him I was. He raised his brows, his eyes flickering in the campfire. He should have told me to put the bottle down or taken it and finished it himself, accepting Gennady's demons from my hand. Tarkovsky was talking about the brutality from which we Russians are born, waves of murder from Svyatopolk the Accursed to Peter the Great. He said we were made of better stuff, but we continually mislaid the stuff and became entangled and enraged in our quest to find it. We looked and couldn't find the missing will to suffuse our world with spirit. With soul, you mean, Andron said, not spirit. With spirit, Tarkovsky replied. If I meant soul, I'd have said soul. Soul is warm, feminine, Russian wood and Russian hearth, said Konchalovsky. Spirit is marble, cold, Greek. You're misunderstanding who we are. We haven't misplaced soul, Andron. We've gotten plenty of that. It's lovely and whimsical and full of fire and sex and sad songs and mother love, but it doesn't connect us to the absolute. It's like an electrical cord that emerges from us like an appendage and asks only to be plugged back into us, a closed circuit that's comforting but solves nothing. My soul, our Russian soul, it's pure solipsism. That's why we see ourselves as paragons of love and continue to slaughter one another. Spirit asks us to confront something both within us and without us, something with certain standards, because it requires us to recognize a universal bond, whether we like it or not. That's what we've misplaced, and its absence drives us crazy. We've made a mess of something that could have been beautiful, and every time we try to clean it up, we make it worse. We build rules upon rules to compel better behavior, but we keep finding loopholes in the rules. It's a material approach to a spiritual problem. In spirit, there are no loopholes because there are no rules. They're not necessary. Rules, I told Andrei, are necessary. Not the kind we make. We make rules about enemies of the state, rules that bind everyone but the state itself, the biggest murderer of all. The bottle in my hand was almost empty. Why was I holding this bottle? Tom's people had it right all along, I said. Thou shalt not kill. All the rest is commentary. Andron looked up in surprise. Surely the state needs authority to coerce, a just state, not a vicious one. Without that, there's chaos. But in practice, our state, I said, has been the agent of chaos. Andron opened his mouth to speak, then closed it. My words had drawn our little group into a circle where any one of us could the next day choose silence or betrayal. Our country was composed entirely of such circles. Gennady stood, poked the fire with a branch, then threw it in. Sparks fluttered into the black sky. Kira, he said, is the best person in the world. I mean that in all sincerity. The terrible truth is a beautiful thing. Agreed? Agreed. Now let's play Burime. One person starts a tale, the next person continues it however he wants, and so on. You remember, like when we were kids. Who wants to start the story? I'll start, Tom said. No, I said. I'll start. I took one last drink, looked into the flames, and spoke. I think the story we should tell is the story of what happened to Alexander Kaplan and what happened to me before my mother even knew me, when our squares were still the parade grounds of Comrade Stalin. The story of what happened to me and the one I loved. I am remembering now. I can speak of ancient loss in the first person. I am remembering now the train and the closeness of the people and the sweat and the babies who cried and suckled and defecated in their mother's arms. I remember the women who had forgotten combs as they were pulled from their homes, trying to brush their hair with their fingertips. I remember matted hair, wiry as wolf fur, as we traveled the 1000th Vyorst. I remember the oily 4-day beard of the peasant commissar who checked on us, nothing but a boy. He ignored the stench and eyed us with raw hunger, but he was too shy for rape. I remember the sisterhood of the train. We didn't know who deserved our love and who wanted to slit our throats, and whether in such circumstances, even those who wanted to slit our throats deserved our love. Slits in the carriage admitted cold air, bitter but welcome. The taiga rolled by, roared by, pine and birch and birch and pine and pine and birch and birch and pine and pine and birch. And oh God, is it pine or is it birch? A church in the woods, all made from wood, pine, or is it birch, fashioned by hands with axes and pegs and not a single nail? God, where is your salvation? You are gone. I cannot see the church anymore. The barracks, the bunks in the place where we stop are too close together. It's unclear whether they've separated the politicals from the common criminals. We are all political. We are all common. Some would kill, some would be killed. In the eyes of the Lord, we are all level. O Stalin, where is the flaming sword of your justice? For I have written you out of Lenin's dreams in lines I thought no one would ever see. But you have seen, you see all. And I and my Alexander, somewhere in the very same endless taiga, shall both see no more. But I have seen death already, before the guns of January, behind the pleadings of a monk on Sunday. Sunday! We are the people you wish to raise into collective godhood by piling us upon one another, one by one, million by million. We shall, comrades, together, we shall reach the sun. It is so very bright up here. Can you see us? Can you smell our flesh? Are we yet saved? Has the paradise come? I shall keep returning. I shall keep returning until such time when the smoke clears over Russia. And even then, who knows, maybe I shall return again to haunt some and love others. I leave it to you to know which you are. Well, Gennady said, who wants to go next? I burst out laughing. Andron and Mitte and Finn tried to be good sports and laugh along. Shukshin, the Siberian, smiled sadly as if he'd seen it all. Tarkovsky rubbed his head as if trying to generate static electricity. Gennady looked into the fire with infinite pity. Tom put his arm around me, and I collapsed into him, laughter turning to tears. The fire was warm upon his hands. That was all true, wasn't it? He whispered. It was. So thank you guys. That's that chapter.
Well, I regret agreeing to read fiction now. That was incredible. Thank you so much for giving us a sneak peek. Very much looking forward to seeing more of that as the process goes on.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you again for sharing.
Thanks.
All right, folks, and next we have got Kelly Dumar, a poet, playwright, and workshop facilitator from Boston. She's author of 4 poetry collections, including Jinx and Heavenly Calling, published by Lily Poetry Review Books in March 2023. Kelly teaches a variety of creative writing workshops and runs play labs for the International Women's Writing Guild and the Transformative Language Arts Network. Kelly produces the featured open mic for the Journal of Expressive Writing as well. And you can reach her at kellydumar.com. And I'm going to drop that link in the chat. And Kelly, take it away. And Kelly has some images and fun stuff to show us in addition to reading. So get excited.
Victoria, I am so grateful to you for hosting us tonight in the Spiral Bookcase. Wonderful. And I'm just really honored that Raegen would invite me to read this wonderful occasion. So thank you very much, everybody. So grateful to be here. It's great to hear everybody. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. My book is a book of epistolary erasure. And so I'm going to use my share screen to tell you about the book and also let you see the poems on the page, because there is absolutely a visual element to the poems. They are poems that I erased from a collection of letters that my mother sent to my father from first date to marriage, 1953, 1954. And so each of the selected poems is set on a palimpsest of some aspect of the original letter that it came from. And this has turned into a multi-generational project. And I'll show you that at the very end as well. I'm also a playwright, and I certainly didn't intend to create this project as a play or a performance piece, but it seems to be evolving a bit into that direction, because as I erased the letters, a lot of it was about wanting to really connect with my mother as this human being and this woman, this person that, of course, I never knew her then. And the letters were just fascinating to me because, of course, they were part of my origin story. So when I engaged with them, I just really wanted to see what might happen if I started erasing them. And there is a bit of a narrative that that I've pulled out, and I'll tell you about that in 1 second. What I have really discovered in this project is that erasure is an organic process. I think it's like cycles of nature, where loss is transformed into something worth keeping in a new way. And I love this quote by the poet David Shasma about erasure. So you open any book or a newspaper article and find language you think is interesting, and cut out all the language that isn't to you a poem, or you conversely take the words you like and make a poem out of them. My idea is that you don't typically choose something already beautifully written that in a way would be too easy, but find nuggets of beauty in something surprising. And that's what I did. So what I wanted was something emotional in each of the poems, or something beautiful. I wanted it to be fragmentary words and phrases and ideas and images that would explode, the kind you look at and they explode with meaning and beauty. Okay, so when I put the book together, I segment it into pretty much 4 stages of relationship. These are all quotes from the letters that I pulled. They may not have been exactly next to each other, but these are parts of the erasures that I gathered. Under a spell, go a blizzard, sneak a better anywhere, and gamble. So those were the 4 developmental phases that I organized it under. And the first one is under a spell. And so this one is called Good Salesman. Here I am again to stay. Try 2 a day. I go fast. You should have the finished product by summer. Only kidding, 3 weeks. I can pep you up, fluorescent. Our little rush. Such good vitamins. Breathe like flying. And her comments here, high influence. Better if I just stay away. 3 cents. The party shall be a far cry from medicine, undivided with 6 kids nagging. P.S. We shall spend. This is the section I called Go a Blizzard. 9:30 a.m. spree. Use it up. Don't care what. Come too early. Be too much. Better get every color. Worry the scales. Dash sleep circles under my eyes. Snow. Ready to drop a riot. Finished back. Started front. Maybe we'll fit together after yarn. I'm embarrassed for room to romp, but I can afford to go a blizzard. Hectic, fire, 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 ripping between a sleigh ride, a downslide. We are in the midst. Which one of us would resist a crying? The section, Sneak a Better Anywhere. Babied. Received this absolutely physical pudding. Decided grown up. Before diplomatic doctors question my funny, awful, I have a million presents. Buy out free time. Knowing. A psychiatrist surrounded women an hour a week, a nut job. Valentine. Get out sick, find instead, party switch, sneak a better anywhere. By the way, my parents were married for over 50 years. In the world coming, finish laundry, talk honey, begin to bill a bit of money, deduct from sooner or later, be unafraid for best salary, be like a diamond, mounted and million. What in heaven's name? See only that. Gamble. Your father was real pleased to hear we were planning such a small wedding. I do hope he will come to church. Hope gone sinus, sharp need, fresh air. A few called the priest a good fellow with pamphlets. Put stock in might and gamble. Father briefly, constantly changes. Junior, have you decided yet whether or not you'll want and let me survive the rough?
Lake. Shall let you explore it with me as your personal guide. Okay? Awake nights walk, balcony, keep crickets company. Ah, summer, come, listen. After married, murder sounds sleeper.
So that was my daughter, Frances Dumar, performing some of the, well, she's performed, that was Lake, but she has performed a number of the, we've recorded her performance of a number of the poems, and we're trying to get them all recorded. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Those were lovely. And it was so fun to get to actually see them. I've heard a good amount of poetry in that style read, but no one has ever showed it at the same time. And I'm glad you did that because, of course, it really adds a ton. Thank you so much for sharing. All right. And next up, we have got Ignatius Valentine Aleosis. I said that wrong. I'm sorry. Correct me, Ignatius. Your last name? You're fine. Okay. We're just going to keep moving. I said it wrong because I'm an idiot. I think it's Aloysius. Earned his MFA in creative writing from Northwestern University, where he won the Distinguished Thesis Award for Fiction and is currently a lecturer in writing and experimentation there. He is the twice Pushcart nominated author of the literary novel Fishhead, Republic of Want out of Tortoise Books 2020, and his prose poetry have appeared in or are forthcoming in Cold Mountain Review, Tofu Inc. Arts Press, Tramp Set, and the Coalition for Digital Narratives, among other venues. A host and curator of Sunday Salon Chicago, a literary reading series in its 17th year, Ignatius is shopping his second novel, a literary speculative work, and his two poetry collections are under contract with Tofu Inc. Arts Press for release in 2023 to 2024. He is currently finishing a poetry collection collaboration with David Aled Sullivan, recent Poet Laureate of Santa Cruz, California. Take it away, Ignatius. You're muted.
I'm sorry about that. Thanks, Victoria, for the great introduction. And thank you, Raegen, for inviting me. Hi, everyone. Good to be here and share the stage with you. Congratulations on your anniversary. Great, great poetry collection. I'm going to read a few poems. This first one, Raegen nominated me for Olympian Magazine, and they accepted this poem, and it was published at the end of April, and it's called We Want Safe Harbors, with an epigraph, quote, "Listen, your world of cornfields rise up in me. Their agitated songs long to be freed," close quote, David Allen Sullivan. We want safe harbors and foods that trace sweet knowledge back to our mothers and fathers, back to a line of fervent ancestors whose intelligence found ways to say, be safe, heal, before the preservation of great harms cost them their calm rivers. If you listen to the dust rising at your feet, it is their moon blush stepping up, their nervousness drawing you on so sensibly, and because these times are harder still. Nature is full of firm forces testing my will, my bone walls on both sides, testing the line leading back through them to my origins. How tall can I stand alone? For how long? It's always the things which I cannot see or touch, things I do not know, that surprise me. This is the poet's skimmed cream, worth so much more. There is a field of corn rising up in each of us, charged by light, by softness, earth's full nourishment. Sunshine's golden eyes cross-examine the care with which we nurture it in all the good and vacant months. Though some periods are not so good, some hurtful. What do I learn when I take a fall from a vehicle steered by handlebars and break a bone that took years to construct? I was going much too fast, faster than life designed for me, confused throttle with the brake, and hit a curb at the same time when my mind's science said my body couldn't match its speed. Of course. In the air, so fast in this free and formidable air, I flew defenseless, vulnerable, until I heard the crack and earth stopped me. Pride lifted me back on my feet, but my dignity fell to its disease. I cried with regret and pain, cried silently for a poultice. We want those safe harbors, dignity's currency to help restore what is lost. We want to go traveling again, soar above the cornfields and public parks, over tall buildings stretching across many square miles to the water's edge and high mark. Every square foot of space is a song waiting to be freed from the feeble throat of the city. This next poem follows an American sonnet form, and it was published on the Coalition for Digital Narratives. Wanderings. I meditate too, but not that way, with breath and body's back, whisked up like mountains form, or kneaded dough, hungering for new life in fire's hot lap, returning to silent fates. I meditate too, but not like ashes, peaked with bated breath, before reaching winds come lifting their gauze through the trees. Take the case of each word that's worth meditating on. There's its form, how it's made, how it clicks and slips between lines on the page. Its meaning as an island or far mountain of wanderings, gifting good rain or burning pangs. I meditate on words and wanderings. Mother's two strokes, throwing her head first to the floor. I couldn't save her. This next poem also follows the American sonnet form and was published on Tramset. Of Anthems. That fringe hour, welcoming sunlight so bright, is the quietest of fall's weekend. A murmur slips by now and then, worshipping quieted machines that would otherwise be sopranos, shrill sounds, or flutes drilling through the genesis of night-buried thrums, while I'd slept with fingers bent tight and hands beating away my ghosts. Now within the walls, something drops with a scrape and thud. So I turn my head, listening, curious, deaf to my work, and paused keyboard strikes as the dog next door barks with intolerant teeth. The drywall thirsts, bits falling, and then the waist-high dresser of varnished pine squeaks from another corner. How silence sings its anthems, and everything breathes. This final poem is from the collection with David. It's called Sea of Dreams, and it has an epigraph. Quote, each of us building with what we've been given, close quote. See, what my friend says is more reasonable than my continued patchy carps. The sidled emotions tunneling through this body, its character known to affection, but also to histories of deception and immigrant hazards. Feel what it feels like to face an unknown place for the first time. Feel its ground move faster than the intelligence of your feet's first imprints. Spend a lifetime listening to the winding strands of stories taught. There is belief, love, even in the backbone of a leaf, seeking union with essence. Does a tree dream of light? A boat have dreams of a calm, perfect sea? Friend, you and I are typesetters in bioluminescent molds. The world waits for our returns, showing prudence by the hour, every quiet hour. Our sense in is of interest to the trade, words sown like habitual fields of corn in smart rows. Patches of hurt must be sewn up, says the proud corncob, if life is to find its kind listeners again. Look closely at a discarded corn husk. It isn't something we pay attention to, but study it when you tear a husk free from the cob. It has its sculptedness, its woven bits, blanket of tamed cells, all pressed, undulating, asking, and then? In it, too, I see my sea of dreams, its first rivers turning nightly with exigent plans of escape from their sources. Thank you very much.
It was gorgeous.
Oh,
Sorry, I know it's your turn to introduce me, but I just had to say, shit, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
all right. And I will be introducing Victoria. So Victoria Meyer is a disabled writer, independent bookstore owner, and suspected changeling. In Victoria's work, you'll find strange doors, spilled cups of tea, star-crossed souls, and gloomy train stations. You can read their writing in Del Sol SFF Review, Fifth Wheel Press, yay, Fifth Wheel. Vulnerary Magazine, also yay, Vulnerary. Sorts Magazine and Luna Magazine. She's currently working on a full-length manuscript, which I am told we are hearing from for the first time tonight. Learn more at Victoria Meyer, that's MIER.com, and follow along on Instagram at Victoria Meyer.
Thank you so much to Raegen for having me. I was delighted when you asked me to host, and then when you asked me to read, I was like, wow, okay, that's very kind. So I suppose that I am in fact going to read. And to all of you lovely literary people, this is genre fiction, so I'm sorry in advance, but I hope that you have fun. This is from my adult fantasy novel, Contemporary Fantasy, and our main character, who incidentally is named Raegen. That's the one. She is a Philadelphia journalist And she has just been given the lead at her newspaper on a series of very suspicious drownings, which are, of course, occurring right around the anniversary of the disappearance of her father that happened many years ago and has never really had any satisfactory answers. So here we go. Day dissolved into night, October waiting for Raegen just beyond the building's doors, grief and memory and shadow hanging in the eaves. When the newsroom quieted and her long form was in her editor's inbox, she slipped out the back entrance and headed for the train station. But instead of the subway, Raegen boarded the commuter rail. Her destination was at the end of the line, far into the suburban reaches. Over the years, her ritual had become refined, exact, and it was important to get as far away from her real life as possible. The few people she allowed close to her were tired of hearing it, and her therapist had to be exhausted by the tale, and what no one realized was that Raegen was sick of it herself. But grief is a story, and it is one that demands to be told. Which is how Raegen found herself in a cozy, if rundown bar somewhere in New Jersey, signed up for an open mic night. The story was best presented to the unsuspecting as fiction. It seems safer that way, like maybe it wouldn't worm itself into the listener's marrow if they thought it were only an exercise of imagination. At least Raegen could hope. She settled onto a stool at the bar and nursed a too-sweet cider, pretending to listen to the performer on stage. Despite the cool weather outside, the bar was unpleasantly warm and everything was sticky. After what felt like 2 years of comedy, Raegen had no choice but to peel off her overcoat and lay it across her lap. Condensation beaded on her bottle of cider. The story rattled inside of her like a caged thing, feathered wings beating against her ribs. Raegen reminded herself to sit like a regular person, to look normal and well-adjusted. In a place like this, only a few seconds of holding herself as if she were protecting an old wound could bring men sniffing, for daddy issues, for insecurities, for painful places they could poke and prod to get what they wanted. But then the host called the pseudonym Raegen had signed up under, and she breathed a sigh of relief, quickly followed by an inhale sharpened with anticipation. She left her coat draped over the stool and pulled her mane of auburn curls off her damp neck as she approached the microphone. No one looked like they cared at all about the open mic, a blessing, so Raegen didn't even bother with the little introduction she sometimes had to give. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and looked out at the small bar. The mismatched chairs, the wobbly tables, the low ceilings, and orange-hued light. Then she took a deep breath and began the story. When my father was young, he met a man on the train platform. The man wore an old-fashioned three-piece suit. The sun was just beginning to set, the sky leaking spill of molasses onto the platform. The man asked my father for a cigarette. He pronounced it cigarette, stressing the last syllable instead of the first two. My father obliged, but when he offered a light, the man only stared down at the cigarette. He rolled it between the fingers of his left hand once, twice, 3 times before tucking it into his pocket. Not even going to smoke it? My father asked. No, the man answered. My father fell silent, moving a step or two away from the man. He stamped his feet against the ground to ward off the winter chill. The platform remained empty. He couldn't see any trains in the distance. His gaze eventually drifted back toward the man. Aren't you cold? My father wanted to know. My father was like that. No, the man answered, his eyes roving down the tracks. He took an old pocket watch from the folds of his tweed blazer. He rolled it between the fingers of his left hand once, twice, 3 times before tucking it into his pocket. As my father watched, the train station began to change. The bricks became new, raw red in the low light. The benches morphed into old-fashioned wrought iron, crisp and black. The colors of the sunset turned sepia. With the start, my father realized there was a train pulling into the platform, though he never heard the engine. The man in tweed approached the door. Do not follow, the man warned. My father noticed that despite the winter air, there was no puff of frosted breath when the man spoke. Who are you? My father remembers asking, though perhaps he already knew the answer. The man stood in the doorway, pulling the cigarette back out of his pocket, rolling it between his fingers. He lingered for a moment, but did not answer, and then disappeared into the darkness of the rickety train, its sides heaving like an exhausted animal. For so many years, my father remembered the man, the train platform, the molasses light. All my life, he paused when we said the Apostles' Creed in church, right before the I believe lines. It was just a small pause. 1, 2, 3. Raegen's mouth felt dry as paper, her heart a war drum. The story was true. Her father was gone, and the story was the only thing she had. And so Raegen would keep telling it again and again and again. It was her way of looking for a door, a curtain to walk behind, a secret place she could go, and maybe her father would be there, waiting. If that kind of door existed, she told herself, she was the kind of person it would appear for, and she would walk through it without looking back. Of course, no door appeared in the wall of the rundown tavern as she paid her tab and gathered up her coat. Nothing in the parking lot either, nor the train station, not even with its flickering lights and empty platform. No matter how many times Raegen begged for a door, or no matter how hard she looked, nothing swung its maw open with a creak that sounded like a lullaby. So she kept telling the story because it was closer to a door than anything else she had ever known. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that the story was an invocation of sorts, a calling of the quarters, a setting of beacons, and when she told it, fate herself swooped low from the never places and listened to the story fall from Raegen's mouth like wine. Thank you, friends. If anybody knows a literary agent that can sell to Tor or Harper, let me know. Anyway, we're going to be moving on to our next lovely, lovely writer, Freddie LaForce, who, as many of you may know, is the founder and editor of Vegetarian Alcoholic Press, an independent publisher with over 30 books in print, including, of course, Head of a Gorgon. And I will drop the link for you all. I carry a lot of VA titles in the store and everyone loves them. So if you haven't checked them out, please do. And Freddie, go ahead and take it away.
Oh, wow. All right. Hey, y'all. Thanks to Raegen for inviting me to read, and thank you, Victoria and Spiral Bookcase, for carrying our shit and championing it so much. Really appreciate your kindness to the press and to all our writers. All right, here we go. A man is not supposed to speak. That's why hair grows over his face. You've spent the last decade rewarding the conceited because you live where the only privilege is talk. Put your life in a frame, rehearse your slogans. Vegetarian, alcoholic, we're all recovering from something. We'd like to believe there's a cure, as if the world wasn't born from collision, as if words matter, as if actions are reversible, erasable, preventable. You can edit your thoughts all you want. Your face and shaking me convey the truth. Every day, every one of us takes another life to continue our own and raise our fists to the sky and scold it for being unfair. Thousands of years of shouting cleared the forests and kept us warm. We pretend to love the earth, but it's burning we crave. Our definition, destruction as a means to ascendance. Combust all possible matter so the parts keep moving. A motor, a skillet, an iron. They sear our distinction from the beasts. We run to the flames. They're all we're good at. We cry for glaciers and hurricanes, not because we're sorry. We pity they'll never be hot enough. Some sizes matter. Tallied hash marks confirm hypothesis. Suspicion treads desired paths. To look at a person as a commitment authorizes failure. Chores are completed. Seasons wrapped in badges cover soft faces and rigid arms. It's unnecessary to change my name to refurbish the mattress to a desk. All embraces are parting. Pieces don't have to be halves. The clerk was waiting and you emerged from the aisle, ginger in your hand. I faced you sympathetically, holding cans. You'd come down with something. I can never tell the difference being always ill. Nevertheless, I set my containers to counter your lacking embrace clung to your root. I turned and paid, passed through cringing wind to let you burn your cold off of you. I'll always move in the wrong direction, hoping you'll let me be wrong for you. Stuck on Wahoo, steeped in Dixie, in delicate slogans screaming innocence, clutching banners, claiming heritage, traditionally stowing riches to rot. Leave it in place, don't move the portrait. Crossfire heirlooms are all you pass. Way out of town, watching your window, you can't see them suffer, so you won't let them in. Sounds of spaces multiplied concepts. My lips made touched objects echo my mother's name. They poised distance at each other, yet drew me close. Engagement still my only taste. They carefully vibratoed their refrains, practicing desolate grief. Later, hearing the rabbits talk of fire sticks and condemned open space, I realized my jaw sat still, clenching my startled sternum, curling the circumference of myself. I realized safety a caricature, the insular terror of secrets. Many methods warm a room. Show me your favorite. All begin with loss. Transfers are right on time or aching, never a comfortable pace. You can build a house, and a house can build a fire. Many draw staircases. Most heights fail levitation. Whatever we've learned is forgotten. We think we know what's right, but it's what we want. This moment is for tearing. Fabrics and patterns once valued, lost in exposure's urgency. An eye for detail shadowed by a mouth that shouts. Sympathy opens cages, meets villains, conditioned. Stitches etched through history, unraveled by fat, greedy hands, dig formal pockets for expired transfers. Exposing flawed tailors might oust insignias, but the need remains to bind. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Freddie. Those were fantastic. I'm so glad that you could make it. Gotta have the publisher, especially right before Raegen herself. It's time, everybody. It's Medusa time. Raegen M. Pietrucha writes, edits, and consults creatively and professionally. Her debut full-length poetry collection, Head of a Gorgon, won a 2020 Human Relations Indie Book Award. Her debut poetry chapbook, An Animal I Can't Name, won the 2015 Two of Cups press competition, and she has a memoir in progress. She received her MFA from Bowling Green State University, where she was an assistant editor for Mid-American Review. Her writing has been published in Cimarron Review, Puerto del Sol, and other journals. Her photography has been published in Ravana Review, Seaside Gothic, and other outlets. And you can connect with her on her website, on Twitter, and on Instagram, all of which I will link you in just a moment. But in the meantime, it's the girl of the hour. Here we go.
The snake lady. All right, so this has been just wonderful. It's been awesome to actually be at the very tail end so I could really listen to everybody and take it all in and not like worry about all the other stuff. But anyway, I just want to thank you all for being here, the attendees, but also the readers. So many people have helped Medusa succeed against the odds, given the subject matter that this book is about. So this is really a celebration of you. I wanted to really kind of come through and you know, giving you guys the opportunity to share your work, which is all very different. And it's so interesting too, because I've read or heard stuff that you have done, and it's just been surprises, because now it's like, oh my gosh, this is so different from what I've read prior. So different from one another, and so different from your previous work, and it's just, everybody's just growing, and it's beautiful. Speaking of celebrations, I do want to acknowledge that today is Leanne's birthday as well. So happy birthday to Leanne, the publisher of my chapbook. And it's also International Goth Day for those who observe. I shared a picture on Twitter of young goth me. I have since had to straighten up and fly right or whatever. But here I am as Medusa. So let's see, the giveaway is going to happen after I'm done. It'll be something that we do via chat, so just gear up for that. I do want to give a trigger warning because, again, this project, which kind of covers, I built out a childhood for Medusa, and then of course take it through the adulthood of Medusa, but there's sexual violence throughout. Nothing too graphic, but if that is triggering for you, you will want to mute me. And I realize that you might have come here for me, but better that you're not triggered and that this is a joyous experience for you, not something painful. So one thing that I like to do is share work from other people whenever I can, when I'm doing a reading. And so I know, Victoria, you said, oh, genre writing and apology, which no apology necessary. Like, we welcome all types of writing. And in fact, I've just started kind of breaking into horror poetry. This book is The Apocalyptic Mannequin by Stephanie M. Whiteovich, and it's about the apocalypse, obviously. Well, one type of apocalypse, I guess, one envisioning. But I think that this work really kind of transcends the genre or whatever. Anyway, I identified with it. And so this poem, in fact, is called Identification. I identify as haunted, as a broken violin, a forest wrapped in fog. If you look between my legs, you will find an empty library, each shelf a collection of ghostings, blank signage for a dimly lit hallway, a spider web, an unfinished opera. I am neither a baptism dress nor a wedding ring, a wake photograph nor a satin-lined bed. If you call, I will not answer. If you run, I promise to hide. But inside my chest beats a jewelry box with no sound, walks an orphan forever flipping pages of an unwritten book. If you pick up the rose on the table or smell the salt stuffed into my mouth, you'll find my future in my palms, my past written in burn marks on my back. Just wrap your wounds carefully, for I am a host of century-long diseases, an epidemic, a long-forgotten plague. And if you hold a seashell up to your ear, it will whisper the endings to every poem. My signature, a cockroach, the poison you left out for the rats. And this poem from, I have to show the cover because it's beautiful. This is by an artist named Jackie Liu, and she did an amazing job. This poem is called Seeing Stars. As a child, I learned this trick. Pressed fingertips to closed eyelids, made the stars appear. When I opened my eyes, blurred darkness. Who's there? I couldn't speak what I feared most, believed speaking made real, summoned things into being again. First grade amnesiac, late night TV's snowy stars sizzling, hoping light would scare anything waiting in darkness to pray. Yearning to learn the right kind of kiss, a blazing in my chest, a whole universe I could spin, hold in like my breath, until my dizzy head, love drunk, could overwrite the past hissing in my skull. No wonder no boy will love you. Look at you. You don't listen, she said. Then mother's knuckly yanks raked the lengths of my hair, fingers treading neck, nails puncturing flesh. But no matter how bright, stars are always quiet, couldn't save me from falling numb, reminded me to cloak my words, left me dumb. There's nothing extraordinary about housing stars, silence tragedies adorning the engulfing night. To think people strive to learn their names, care about naming them, always waiting for their stupid distant light to reach, as if that touch is kind. Just speaking of them sets them in their searing motion, and from there, no escape from their twisted elliptical fates. Listen, I'm carving a new star in this darkening skin. I create it as easily as I say the words. I search for some hero, some Orion without a loose belt who will sing the lullaby that can put me to sleep, who can sing the song that brings me back to dream. But can he exist without all those rivets of stars? Who's there, still waiting for the night to rise? There's a series of 3 poems throughout the book that are titled Your Captain Speaking, and you can think of that captain as either an unreliable narrator or an ultra reliable narrator. But this is sort of in between the youth and the adult. So this is your captain speaking. The men of nets have their ways. Wives and daughters play their part, weave so husbands and sons can leave at dawn, sweep salted waters with lengths of trains that callous their hands. Poverty is obvious. It's the crisp of skin peeling off the sunburned leather of a sea-weathered neck, the stink of fish too deep beneath the nails to be breached. The way captives will always be clubbed in their traps as if all smaller creatures were made simply to pay a penance. The flimsy body buckling, conferring blood, delivering one last flail after the strike that finally breaks it arrives. There is hunger, too much hunger. Who knows where it comes from? The day you meet him, your insides grind against themselves. He lumbers under a palpable weight of fish from that water, wet iridescent prizes glistening. You pray they'll crush you. They will. The moment your teeth gnash meat, you christen him your lord. This is one of the dialogue poems. There's a dialogue series between Medusa and Poseidon, and this is Lesson at the Ranch. What desert reminds me? Secrets can hide from outsiders, but not from my body. Its curves consumed by sand, heels up to thighs, back, and clinging sweaty to my neck. What if I say more? Cows don't know they're fed fat for slaughter. Their calves will forget them. This knowledge won't change the patchwork of hide and land that cloaks daily affairs like the quilt you lie over, not under us, gnats swimming in our humidity. What desert reminds me? Secrets can hide from outsiders, but for how long? The hurts my mouth blurts betray but don't end your quest. The sand is shadowing, turning a bolder version of itself. You're bolstered over me, stained by sweat, sun, dusty stalks of electrified straw. The sun falls and all I can do is try to find something sharper than the pain. Clouds above unravel sky like hides ripped, revealing the red of an animal I can't name. After, I sit in a tub with no water. Then I sit on a porch. It's morning once more. A herd speaks from the distance, too far to see. The land remembers its lot and feeds it. The earth remembers its purpose, continues to break beneath teeth. And this is one where she really Medusa's out. So here we go. Transfiguration. 1. Duplicitous blood. Once my blood moved nothing like red. Then ache cut down to the veins. Overthrew the blue liquid my body breathes through. Now that fickle drip sticks beneath my skin in purple pools, confused, seeking a new refuge, as if water or wine could take its place, as if the sun could stretch far enough to touch and warm me, as if red could travel far enough back to resurrect a girl felled in the grass at sunset. 2. Defeated wings. My back strains beneath the weight of a black, broke divinity. Holy leaves flap in the breeze, but their words don't restore me. I can't flee this body. My mind can't find a peak to soar to. The weight of memory tethers me. 3 unblinking eyes. I'd saved my gaze to search for a hero, only to find another predator's conceit. Now salt singes my sockets. Vigilant beacons forget the comfort of closing, refuse any respite from their watch. 4 hardened hands. Foolish digits will forget how they almost submitted, cringe at the thought that they once sought another's. Battle-bruised knuckles proved useless, shriek as they bend. A new mold must be poured. I swim my hands in. To burn in guilt now might make me invincible once the heat's depleted. 5 forking tongue. They might say with this spoiled mouth I slander, but they split me. My tongue senses the stench they left in stereo. Trespassers treading the end of this plank, you're the venom I retch from. 6 snaking mane. No body could bear such warfare. My head delivers riddles of persistent hisses, forbidden liberation for so long. Twisted hair springs, slithers, claims my scalp's terrain and crowns my fate. Thanks to these men, the oblivious birth of my serpents. Things get better after that, but you have to read the book and kind of watch that unfold. Anyway, I wanted to end on something a little bit lighthearted, but also related. And as I was thinking about the event, I thought back to grad school when I first started this project, and it was a very different project when it started back then. But I had written this kind of somewhat goofy, but somewhat also, I guess, relevant thing. So I'm just going to read it. It's called Medusa Applies Abroad for Her Former Job as God. Dear Miss Medusa, our office has been notified of your interest in the position of local god, and we are in receipt of your application for a station you formerly held elsewhere. Your many years of experience embodying the life-death duality, not to mention your fantastic snake charming abilities, are both impressive qualities that we might seek in our ideal candidate. There are, unfortunately, 2 issues at hand. You are far older than our budding but great city-state, and we're really seeking to be represented by a fresher face. Also, your, how shall I put it, yonic implications are, well, problematic. See, we are attempting to diverge from circularity, create an explanation for nature that is firmer, more linear. We are, after all, a rising patriarchy. So it is with regret that I inform you that this particular position has instead been filled by a young up-and-coming buck named Zeus. We realize this may be disappointing news. However, we would like to extend an offer for an equally vital villain position to you. Truth is, we could use a head like yours to tame some unruly men, and we've heard it can be quite useful in imperialistic conquests. Plus, Zeus is in need of a trusty mode of transportation. Your flying horse would be a great fit. Respectfully, Mr. Grease. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to give away a book, and Kelly's going to give away a book. And it's going to be really easy. So basically, the first person to guess the number that I've written down before this all started, 1 to 10, just drop it in the chat. Keep on guessing until the number strikes, and I will mail you a copy of Medusa. It's 1 to 10. Sorry, Chris. Okay, Ben. That's very funny though. 8,000. That's the one. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, you guys are too much. Everybody's guessing 9, but it's not 9. I feel like every number's been guessed but the 1. There you go. Chris, you got it. It's 10.
Oh.
All right.
All right, and I'm ready to go, right?
Yes.
So everybody, 1 to 10. Please put a number in so you can win a copy of Jinx and Heavenly Calling, which I will also mail to you. All right, where do these begin now?
It started, yeah.
What's my timestamp of when they moved from yours to mine? I don't know.
Maybe around 10, I don't know.
Okay, hold on.
Did
It is
the number
5. Ben, did anyone before Ben say 5?
No.
Okay, there's my number, 5. Okay, so Ben Durbin, if you message me or whatever your address, I'm happy to mail you a copy of Jinx and Heavenly Calling.
Okay, so my sister who guessed the number is now insisting, and she does have copies. So I thought maybe she was going to send one to a friend. I didn't know what she was doing, but that's cool. So now I have to write down another number. That's great. So, all right, I've written down another number. So let's do this. Everybody but my sister. Let's do this again. 1 to 10. You're not sorry. It's fine. No, it's not 10 again. There it is, Julia. 8. Infinity. All right. I will send you a copy. All right. Well, I think that's everything. Thank you again, everybody, for being here and for being part of Medusa's birthday. She's been sitting here the whole time, but
Oh.
I was wondering where she was.
she's here. She's always here.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Great to see everyone. Thank you again. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.